Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Dragon's Breath Bow Wow, welcoming you back to another episode of the Chaos series. Today we are talking about the last of the four Chaos Gods as the starter for our series, Slaanesh. Of course, obligatory trigger warning. This is a video about Slaanesh. If you don't know anything about 40k, this is the god that has nothing to do with any of the other gods of emotions, and could generously be regarded as a rather base individual, so please tune your ears accordingly. So, the god Slaanesh, him or herself, and of course the question therein becomes, is Slaanesh a him or a her, or God knows something in between? I generally refer to Slaanesh as a she, as a her. However, it is equally applicable to call Slaanesh male. However, what I tend to shy away from is anything that tries to indicate that Slaanesh is androgynous, or rather that they are non-gendered whatsoever. In most people's ideas of Slaanesh, it simply appears as what exactly you wish it to appear as. It is deceptive in that way, for a reason that we will talk about later. A very your own pick your poison god or goddess, so whatever you are physically or morally or immorally attracted to, that is how it appears. Thus, it is both male and female, while also being male and female exclusively. Very confusing, but believe me, it makes sense when you understand that this is a god who really doesn't give a damn other than fulfilling her aims. So, the theorized origin, again going along with our theory of the Chaos Gods, Slaanesh is the only one that really doesn't need any changes. Everyone knows when Slaanesh is born. The ruin of the Eldar. Well, the Eldar kind of ruined it for themselves, now didn't they? They, after a long period of severe strife in the War in Heaven, decided that they wanted to repopulate the galaxy and dramatically increase the number of Eldar who were within said galaxy. Unfortunately, being the only left highly intelligent species and highly psychically active species in the galaxy, along with many others that were actively developing during the fall of the Eldar Empire, they went a little bit too far, and not only ruined their own reproductive capacity, but also managed to become so decadent, so debauched, so vile, and so violent that their psychic gestalt, their souls, and also their emotions and psychic powers, influence the warp to either create or to awaken the Chaos God Slaanesh. Now, we always claim that the Eldar created Slaanesh, or that they genesised Slaanesh, and I think that's a fairly arguable point. I mean, you could argue that Slaanesh was in the same exact dormant state as all of the other gods, but her particular realm or purpose to exist had not come in yet, as the other three, their primordial purpose was still keeping them in dormancy, but they were still in existence. Perhaps Slaanesh was in the same boat until the fall of the Eldar, or the more common explanation is just that the Eldar are the ones, through their genesis and their ability to quote-unquote create gods with their psychic presence, made Slaanesh essentially on accident, who then proceeded to devour the rest of their pantheon, empowering herself to genuine chaos godhood. So originally, technically, she would have started out as an Eldar god, and based on some theories, that is actually what she was supposed to be. Again, if you believe that the kernel of creation that existed for all the Chaos Gods and yet had not become fully active was dormant until the fall of the Eldar, if you believe that, then the Chaos Gods are separate from reality and predestined upon awakening. That is one theory. The other side of the theory is that Slaanesh as a concept was birthed in the same way that the Eldar's gods were born, and as a result, she is an Eldari goddess who then devoured all of their other pantheon, ascending to chaos godhood. Either way, it means that her rules and her function is a little bit different in terms of the great game, and while her awakening does really kick the game off into high gear, as now there is a new, young, vicious, and violent contender to the throne, or depending on some interpretations, a pretender to the throne, if you believe she is an Eldar goddess and not a Chaos goddess, but I don't subscribe to that theory. I think she's Chaos all the way, and the seed or kernel that was hers is merely awakened and massively empowered at an incredibly high speed by the ruin of the Eldar. The idea of her being purely Genesis by the Eldar ruin is kind of a moot point. If you can create a Chaos god from nothing, it's arguable that the gods in any way could be created from nothing, at which point, again, it's chicken or the egg. Was she there and then was awakened, or was she not there and simply existed? It doesn't matter either way, because the theory for her origin remains the same, at least time period-wise and function-wise as well. In any case, in the modern 40k universe, she is a Chaos god through and through. Her holy icons, of course, being the youngest god, she has the lowest number, 6. 666, the number of the beast, a very traditionally humanist concept that we'll be going into often. There is a real conception around the old version of demons in the Bible and heavy Christians theism and symbolism with Slaanesh. The idea of a traditional demon, a Luciferian type model for demonic creatures or for a demonic leader, kind of applies in a lot of ways to Slaanesh. We often think of the red-horned devils of Khorne, or even the nightmarish eldritch horrors of Tzeentch, but we really don't think of Slaanesh in cooperation or in relation to traditional Abrahamic faith demons, or really to Lucifer himself. But I actually put forward that 6 number is not without reason, and one of the reasons that this is that Slaanesh is all about taking what is good about humanity, what is positive about emotions, and twisting it to foul aims, which, of course, lines up very actively with Lucifer in the Bible. The bringer of light, causing suffering to all mankind out of vengeance and petty hatred. Vanity, all the great sins that are embodied in Lucifer are copied within Slaanesh. Of course, in addition to the number 6, we have pink and purple, classic ones. You often see very much a lot of black as well, so you'll see pink and purple as the regular colors, and then black as either trim or armor pieces or claws. Of course, her animals are various. She kind of picks up scraps from the other Chaos gods. The big one is crabs. Again, crabs can kind of be shared by a lot. Pick up from other gods. Innuendo, my bad. Crabs are kind of shared by a couple of different gods, at least the idea of like carcinization, where creatures become more crab-like. Tzeentch would be the most obvious contender. You can see very often with Slaanesh how she steals or picks or tries to take things and jealously, selfishly absorb them into her own worship. This is a good example of that, because while Tzeentch represents a lot of sea life and a lot of underwater creatures and aquatic animals, Slaanesh has crabs. Why? Probably out of pure spite. But, yeah. The other one is spiders, goats, and serpents. Now, depending on Old World versus New World, serpents were a pretty classic symbol of Slaanesh. It represented both seduction, secreted violence, the kind of poison sinuity of non-limbed animals, and it also represented speed. Now, the same thing applies with spiders that applies with serpents. They are hunters, they are capturers, they spin complicated webs, not just to entrap people or things within them, but to then drain them of life over a period of time. Very representative of what Slaanesh does. You know, naturally we would align spiders with Tzeentch, or we would align goats with Khorne, but it's a very particular thing with Slaanesh, and for goats, I'm not sure if you're aware, but the reference is carnality. It is physical affection, let's just say, in terms of goats. List of titles, I think we all know them very well. The Prince, the Dark Prince, the Prince of Pleasure, the Prince of Excess. Again, great references to classic Lucifer, to classic satanic to satanic like references to theology. The idea of a fallen runner-up, the idea of a fallen secondary, someone who could have aspired to greatness or who does aspire to greatness, but is now just a petulant, petty, jealous, selfish creature. So always the taking of the high ideals of happiness, of pleasure, of everything good, relief about humanity, and then perverting it, quite literally in some cases, into a decadent excess, a prideful, self-pleasuring process that really sucks the life out of the victim. Descriptors and tenets. Well, we have a few here. The big one is the pain and pleasure principle. This is kind of the thing that births Slaanesh. Now, it's not to say that Slaanesh dislikes pain. This is an important thing with the pain and pleasure principle. The natural pain and pleasure principle within animals or creatures or living beings is to maximize pleasure, minimize pain. It is a purely hedonistic type of lifestyle and theology, where you aim intentionally to maximize the amount of positive emotions and minimum the amount of suffering, or minimize the amount of pain that you have to undergo in order to do those things. This is what drives people to ever more complex and ever more extravagant levels of excess, because as you try and minimize pain and maximize pleasure, you are going to find that it is more and more difficult to both get the correct amount of pleasure and avoid the requisite amount of pain. The problem is that is maybe perhaps where Slaanesh starts, or it is the narrow wedge of her influence, as many people are experiencing more pain than pleasure, and thus she offers them more pleasure without any pain initially. But the problem is what she demands of you. She's like a junkie, or really a dealer, to all of her worshippers. She wants it taken to excess. Whatever it is, X taken to excess. As much as possible, she will push for more and more and more. Not more sacrifices or blood in the name of corn, not more resilience, durability, plagues, or despair in terms of Nurgle, not more plots, ambition, or power in terms of Zeech, more pleasure, and with it, more pain. As you heighten that pain and pleasure dynamic, that principle of Slaanesh, you will have more and more excess. Perhaps the first time that you paint on your canvas, it is beautiful, incredible. You're given so much pride and accolades, you can take happiness from it, but it's only one canvas, it's only one artwork. What about the next one? How can you live up to the one that you just made? Well, of course it's going to take more effort, so you buckle down, you work day in, day out, burn the candle at both ends, you work constantly for weeks and weeks and weeks until it is perfect. And there it is again, that high, that feeling, that recognition, that pride, but your hand hurts, it's carpal tunnel, it's starting to get difficult to hold your brush, and you're tired of sitting in this room, and yet you have to keep going. The next canvas, the next rush, the next amount of pleasure that you're going to get from your next accomplishment, you have to get there, and each time she ratchets up the pleasure, and ratchets up the pain. Each and every time that you succeed, that you go through the principal balance of pain and pleasure with Slaanesh, it will become harder and harder, and yet become more and more satisfying and rewarding. There is also a theory that people have that it becomes less satisfying over time. Now, that may be true in the physical, but the thing is, Slaanesh's rewards more than make up for it. The idea is essentially that as your body decays, and as your ability to go to the extremes becomes lessened, well, that's where her blessings start to come in, and they make up the gap. So, we'll talk about that later. The process is very simple. I call it the 4 Ps. The first one is pleasure, something that you enjoy doing, something that makes you feel good, something that's an accomplishment, a capability, a skill that you can hone, a very specific thing that makes you feel good. Is it a sport? Is it artwork? Is it drugs? Is it alcohol? Is it your preferred individuals? Is it whatever it may be? It has to be something that makes you feel good, and something that isn't just work. That's another important thing. People often point to, well, I could just be the best worker in town. You could be, but only if it requires an actual amount of skill, and it makes you happy. If you are a steel worker or a blacksmith, well, that's an accomplishment. That's personal validation. But if you work on an assembly line and you're not really doing much, can you really be said to be benefiting from any pleasure at a work well done? Arguably, yes, there are certain individuals who do get massive amounts of satisfaction from a hard day's work, and that is a way that Slaanesh can get to you. And of course, pleasure is the first thing she offers, with no strings attached at first. But then comes the next step, pain. Important part here, pain. The next round of pleasure, the next benefit that you gain, will come with some level of agony. Now, again, Slaanesh's agony is not Nurgle's suffering. They are drastically different. One of them is sharp, it is intense, and it is intentional. The other one is pervading and pervasive and long-term. Nurgle wants you to suffer for a while so that you can get used to it. Slaanesh wants to crack the whip over your back so that you get moving. It's a very different type of punishment. And in Slaanesh's mind, it isn't even punishment, it's just pleasure that you haven't realized that you enjoy yet. Which, yeah, that's another thing. Once the pleasure and pain is managed and you continue up that ratcheting process, you enjoy a thing, you suffer from enjoying that thing too much, you continue to enjoy it regardless, you push harder and harder and harder, you suffer more and more acutely until eventually you get to a principal balance. Now, principal balance is a point at which you are working at the maximum capabilities of the human body. Whatever it took to get there, whatever anorexia you had to develop, whatever eating disorder you had to gain, whatever mental break you had to suffer through, whatever physical toil you had to suffer through, whatever drugs you had to take, whatever you had to do to balance out your human potential with whatever was making you happy, it reaches the point that I call principal balance and that Slaanesh calls perfection. Perfection is the point where human possibility, the human scale of possibility of your body, of your capabilities, bottoms out. And you've reached the maximum possible level that with whatever resources that you have at your availability that you're going to be able to reach. If you're a painter, you are Picasso. You are so famous. Every doodle that you do on a napkin is worth $500,000. Every piece or every work of art that you manage is incredibly priceless. You're so wealthy that you can barely even count the money. But there's going to be a downside. You've reached peak artistic performance, but you're completely depressed. You feel nothing anymore. Doing all of this work is pointless. You feel none of the happiness that you felt when you were first working on your projects. Well, what to do then? You've accomplished the goal, right? What does she ask of you? Well, it's very simple. It's a selfishness. It's pride. The last step is to look back at that principal balance, to identify that perfection, to say, wow, I am the best. I am better than everyone else. Not only am I better than everyone else, I'm better than everyone else. There will never be someone as good at art as I am. I am the old masters to whom others will look back. And even though in my current state of mind I feel nothing but sad, numbing depression, I feel pride, that burning, visceral, jealous, selfish, self-centered emotion that drives me to know that I am the best. Me. I. Self-indulgent. Self-aggrandizing. Self-permitting. Because, of course, with that gap in that pleasure-seeking, and with that inflated sense of pride, then she has access to make you do whatever she wants. And that's where she gets you. So, that's a little bit too much on the theology. I'm gonna go over it later. The Palace of Slaanesh is the main realm. She has several levels to her overall realm, and then at the very bottom is the Palace of Slaanesh, which is most replicated by any number of parties in Hollywood in the modern day. It is constant, ongoing, massive rave of narcotics and other materials which I cannot mention on YouTube. Let's just say triple X rated R plus whatever else you would like to say, things that you can't show to other people, or your hard drives are getting grabbed by the FBI. So, the realms are as follows, and this is applicable wherever you go into a realm. You can't really break into the palace, you have to pass through the levels. Greed, gluttony, carnality, pride/power, vanity, and perfection. Perfection is the quote-unquote front lawn of the palace. Obviously, greed, you are tempted with every single thing you could possibly want. Whether this is a psychic vision or literal demons offering you things, it doesn't seem to matter. The challenge is usually custom-made to the individual entering the realm. And one of my favorite things to do when I show off the Palace of Slaanesh, or really the realm as a whole, is to show that not everyone is on their A game at the level of greed, gluttony, and carnality. Some of them are bored. Some of them are a little bit off-kilter, and these demons, who have essentially been thrown out of the party and told to go guard the outer gates, are a little bit annoyed that they have to do so. And this is very, very consistent with Slaanesh's demons. They don't really give much of a darn about anything except getting back into the Dark Prince's good graces. And having work to do is literally like a punishment for them, because they want to be where the action is, right at Slaanesh's side, partying along for all of eternity with her most valued of servants. So, being forced to guard greed, gluttony, and carnality that far away from Slaanesh herself is quite boring and honestly a little bit upsetting for some of the lower grade demons, and you would not catch a greater demon dead doing anything except walking the boundary line to make sure that other demons from other realms are not getting in. Gluttony, obviously a very common thing with Slaanesh. I know that some people are a little bit confused. They think that Nurgle embodies gluttony. This is not often the case. The corpulence of Nurgle is rather from corpse gases and from bloat and, well, bruising in many cases, whereas gluttony in terms of Slaanesh is a literal consumptive greed. It is food, it is drink, it is drugs, it is everything that you can put into your body that causes you to release dopamine to feel good. Carnality is obvious. You are tempted either by any number of demons. Basically every single one of Slaanesh's demons are well versed in seduction to at least some degree. Pride and power, this is usually a vision offering you whatever you want, essentially a distracting, impossible thing that will drive you mad for want of it, and yet you'll have to leave to pass further. Vanity offers you exactly the future that you would like. It gives you a vision or a physical manifestation of whatever you would like your future to be. If you are a human, this is absolute power. Now, of course, pride and power are different things. One is personal. Vanity is reflective. You can feel personally proud of yourself or personally powerful. Vanity is reflective. Vanity is from the outside. It is the idea that others look up to you, or that they should look up to you. Vanity is a fulfillment of that personal selfishness. And then perfection. Now, often I like to view perfection as just being outside of the Palace of Slaanesh and being absolutely transfixed by the impossible beauty of the place. Not to mention the fact that there is the large line of rollickers who have been thrown out of the party, who are creating a living and often cutting wall that prevents you from actually getting into the palace itself. So good luck fighting over the front lawn, but it has been done before. Additional notes. So Slaanesh is mostly at odds with Khorne. And remember how I often said that Slaanesh likes to steal from the other gods, whether it's conceptually or literally? This is because they have a very similar hold on the concept of pride. Now, obviously, Slaanesh's version of pride is very selfish. It's very internal. It's very self-aggrandizing and self-promoting. Khorne's version of pride is martial pride. It is personal pride in your martial capabilities or in your righteousness. Now, you could be a selfish, prideful, and martial person and worship Slaanesh. The only difference would be that rather than reveling in the fact that you can use your capabilities, your talents with the blade for good, or for righteousness, or for the glory of Khorne, rather than that, You are simply so puffed up at the fact that you are better than everyone else. It doesn't matter what you do with it. You can literally rest on your laurels until they rot from your head. No one will ever be better than you because you have been blessed by perfection, by the prince. It's a very different concept, but because they poach from one another, it often means that Slaanesh and Khorne are diametrically opposed. Not to say that Slaanesh gets along with any of the other Chaos Gods either. She is very much an upstart to all of them, and she dislikes them in turn. The only one that I could see her getting along with for any period of time is Tzeentch, because they are both big on the whole not getting your goals through direct intervention type of thing. Whereas I doubt she would work with Nurgle if she had any choice whatsoever, and of course Nurgle is still holding her in absolute and utter contempt because she still wants to eat Isha, his wife. So, she's not really friendly with anyone, is Slaanesh. Except for her followers, of course, and her demons. So, got some really nice art here. I've got some credits for it at the end. Slaanesh's demons are a concept of base emotions created into complex creatures. Now, these complex creatures are elevated into an art form, and they are the difference between the unseen and the seen forms of corruption. What the hell does any of that mean? Let me explain. Base emotions: lust, carnality, pride, greed, disgust, jealousy, selfishness. All of these things are what we consider base emotions. They're not things that we as a human race are proud of, for the most part. We often think of things like pride as a major sin. Lust, obviously, is a major sin. Gluttony, a major sin. Things that are bad for people to have because they have negative effects on society and their fellow man. Slaanesh, on the other hand, is built and born, bread and butter, from these base emotions. These things which humanity would love to reject, if only it wasn't so baked into our DNA that it is completely inescapable. Mankind falls victim to Slaanesh far more easily than even the Eldar do in the modern 40k universe, because we are vulnerable to that level of seduction and, honestly, deception. Now, what do I mean by deception? Well, it's the fact that these creatures are elevated to an art form. They represent things that are not necessarily true. But then again, what is truth? And this is something that I've made reference to with other demons, especially with Nurgle. Why don't Nurgle followers find Nurgle's demons horrifying? Well, it's because they don't see them like you and I see them. A Nurglite follower, and in this case a Slaaneshi follower, would not see a demonette as a horrible, alien-looking creature with disgusting crab claws covered in spikes with a black hole mouth full of jagged teeth. They see a beautiful woman. You know, perhaps a little odd, perhaps a little modified, but it's beautiful to them. Now, this is a direct result of corruption, something that changes the form of the demon based upon who is looking at it. And this is something that we often see with many different demons, but it is Slaanesh who uses this to the absolute maximum capability. This seen and unseen form, the thing that the Imperial sees versus what the Cultist sees, not only explains a lot about how Slaaneshi corruption works, and works into the minds of their followers, but it also explains something very important about these base emotions. At humanity's best, at our most righteous, at our most capable, and at our most self-reflective, we know that Slaanesh's worship, that the things that the Dark Prince stands for, are bad. They are taboo. They are evil, they are brutal, and they do not bring good things to mankind. That's at our best. What if we're not at our best? Well, suddenly things look a lot different. How many alcoholics do you know who are perfectly happy and excited people, ready to go to work and be productive if they're completely sober? Not many. How many genuine nymphomaniacs are completely willing to start their day fresh and ready to go without any thoughts of anything carnal whatsoever? Not many. Slaanesh plays upon human weakness, human addiction, and the brokenness of the human moral system. The idea that we as a society may consider ourselves civilized, organized, and well mannered, and yet in our private rooms, in our own daily lives, and of course in the thoughts in our minds, we are all filthy degenerates at the end of the day. And of course, Slaanesh playing off that is exactly how this seen and unseen form works. If an uninitiated person were to just see a greater demon of Slaanesh, it would not look endearing at all. At least not until they got closer. But it would not look endearing at all to them initially. However, Slaanesh's magic, the various breaths and auras and musks that come off of their demons, are inherently designed to break down those mental inhibitions within mortal creatures, and to allow the mind to accept the more real image of what Slaaneshi demons are, the things that they represent, the things that they cause in human beings. Now, this applies to everything. Of course, the initial thought is, well, they just become beautiful, they become alluring. It's not always the case. They might become entertaining, and I know, it's funny. You could think of a comedian who has become more and more funny as the night goes on. Why is that? Well, they're blessed by Slaanesh. They have an aura that makes it that whenever they tell a joke, each time that somebody breathes in the air around them, they're more and more convinced that that was an absolute knee-slapper of a joke. And of course, that's a very specific example. What if you're an enrapturous? The music that you play to a non-believer is discordant, violent, completely random, and loud to the point of annoyance. But then they listen to it a little bit more, and that earworm gets inside of them, that corruption starts working on them, and all of a sudden they're completely distracted. They can't think. The music is pounding through their head, and their headache's gone away. The anxiety that they had has gone away. The fear that was natural to their daily life has simply evaporated. And this music is sounding more and more beautiful as I keep listening. And that's how it goes. So, let's start off with the demonettes. Demonettes come in a lot of different shapes and forms, and you will notice that many of Slaanesh's demons have inconsistent shapes and forms, 100%. Now, there are two theories to this. Either it is a custom job, they are intentionally made in a way that represents a certain particular form of Slaanesh's worship, or they specialize in a certain way of doing worship. Or the other theory, and honestly, in my opinion, the one that makes the most sense, is whatever form they choose to take, much like traditional demons from theology, or in fact, fallen angels from theology as well, going back to that Lucifer idea with Slaanesh, takes on the form that is required for the occasion, takes on the visual representation of something that befits the situation, which of course is very pretentious and very prideful, very much the demon thinking, I have to go play dress up for a couple hours just to make sure I get that perfect effect. Which I think tracks with a lot of these demons. Demonettes are the Slaaneshi satyrs as well. Going back to that carnality of the goats, the whole vicious frolicking that we often align with satyrs in Greek mythology, their purpose is to rollick and to manipulate. While they can act as soldiers, they are far less durable and significantly more poorly armed than some other demons. For example, Khorne's demons are usually able to beat the brakes off of a demonette in a one-on-one battle. This is often why demonettes never engage on a one-to-one basis, unless they are exalted demonettes. Demonettes like to gang up on people, much like satyrs, to overpower, to dismember them, or to take control of them. One demonette is not too much of a threat. They are still dangerous. They are unbelievably, disgustingly fast, in fact. They are almost as fast as some other demons, though of course because some of Khorne's demons can teleport, they are a little bit slower at times, but it is all a matter of perspective, and at the end of the day, their job is not just to be murdering people. Their job is also to break people. Now, breaking people does not mean what you think it means. It could simply mean that they want to cut someone. Not cut an arm off, not slash through an artery, not cut their throat, but just cut them. Snip one of their sinews on the back of their knee. Make it so that they can't walk. Cause them to crawl. What does that do? Well, it allows the demonettes to move onward, and it leaves the human as a prisoner for whatever demons are coming behind them, or it leaves them for later enjoyment. Demonettes, like the satyrs of myth, are sadistic and masochistic to a degree. They are violent in a way that would belie their relatively nimble and slight frames. They are brutal creatures, and as lesser demons, they are not as complex as many of the other demons that we will talk about. However, they are more intelligent than most other minor demons. In comparison to Nurglings, or Plague-Ridden of Nurgle, or Plague-Bearers, or even Bloodletters in many cases, demonettes are far more capable of speech. They are far more capable of manipulation. They are far more capable of intentional planning, and in fact long-term planning. And this is one of the reasons why demonettes are so talented at hiding possession. They are not drawn by the instincts of an external force. A bloodletter that inhabits a human will be drawn to kill. He will create a serial murderer out of the person who he is inhabiting. A demonette has no such intention. This vessel has much more to experience before they choose to emerge into real space. And so that means that they can fly under the radar far more easily than most other demonic possessions. And what are the outward signs of such a possession? Different colored eyes? Perhaps a perfected physique, maybe a little bit of physical change or mutation, but in comparison to growing a pair of 2-foot flaming horns and beginning to scream about blood and skulls, it's a much more subtle creature. Mixing in with that fey aspect that aligns with satyrs. What about the mid-rank demons? Well, we have two, and if I'm going to be honest, steeds and fiends are my absolute favorite demons in all of 40k. It's pretty much just steeds. Now, fiends are cool. They're essentially bipedal raptors with tongues that can punch through armor. They are warped steeds and clever beasts with a very specific function, usually. They're not very intelligent, but again, they are more intelligent than most mid-ranking demons. Again, Tzeentch's demons are intelligent book-wise, Slaanesh's demons are intelligent socially, maxed out charisma stats. Why do I like steeds so much? Two reasons. One, it fits the traditional serpent aesthetic that I think gets lost a lot of the time with Slaanesh. People kind of forget that she's supposed to be represented by the serpent, by the snake, the deceiver, that classic Lucifer or Satan symbol that is brought into 40k. And the steed is just that. For lack of a better term, it's a boob snake. It is a snake with 8 levels of breasts. Or 6, depending on the interpretation. And this creature is not able to speak. Its head is a cone, much like the fiend, and yet it is described as having a very particular musk. A aura, for lack of a better term, that affects mortals in a specific way. This creature is very much analogous to a lot of early cult symbols that would come in our own universe. Creatures of fertility, creatures of violence of a very specific kind are analogous to the steed of Slaanesh. And I think that it's actually a very, very underused demon. I like it a whole bunch. But these are still steeds. They are meant to carry other creatures into battle, or they can act as war demons, or even more often, they act as the fuel for demon engines, or the center for a demon engine. Why is that? Well, one, they're very big, they have natural spikes, they're not incredibly intelligent, so it's easier to trick them into the engine, and demonettes don't tend to have a lot of power individually. They can possess humans just fine, but powering an entire tank with just one demonette is a little bit rough. With a steed, on the other hand, or God forbid, with a fiend, you'll be able to power a tank, or a mauler fiend, or whatever else you would like to put in there. But what do they serve as steed for? What do they serve as steeds for? The Exalted. Now, amongst these, there are many different versions, the Enraptress, the Allurus, and the various unique iterations. Now, this is entirely based on attention. You can very much consider a lot of Slaaneshi demons to be playing a attention-seeking contest. I'm not going to say it's some bitchy high school gossip bullshit, but it very much is some bitchy high school gossip bullshit with a lot of Slaanesh's demons. And that's how a lot of these Eraptresses and Aluruses and their unique iterations get their jobs. They claim to be the best. They have this ability, they have this uniqueness, whatever is different about them or whatever they've gleaned from their siphoning of mortal power has impressed Slaanesh, and her attention, doled out to her successful soldiers, empowers them to actually live up to what they already believe they can do. It's a very confusing thing with these demons because they don't really become more powerful until acknowledged by Slaanesh. Now, Slaanesh has a lot of attention to give out, but she also has a lot of demons, meaning that lots of demonettes can get very, very strong and very, very hyper-fixated on one or another thing, hoping to get noticed, and yet never become a true exalted. This is a very interesting thing that we look at with demonettes that have very different forms or different specializations, something that we don't see amongst almost any other demons whatsoever. They are intentionally trying to be better at their job, whatever it may be, and yet they haven't gotten attention yet to become a true exalted demon. This also, when it comes to unique iterations, I would also like to remind you that any pleasure-pain mentality will afflict these creatures, and they will be drawn to it. That does technically mean that you could have a unique iteration of an exalted demonette that is intentionally trying to get people hooked on nicotine products. I'm not even kidding. There is a very high chance that somewhere in the galaxy there is a demonette who is effectively hanging out at a gas station or corner store trying to get cultists hooked on cigarettes or glow sticks in 40k. And I don't know what that demonette looks like, but I would like to, because that is hilarious. But apart from my absolutely hilarious headcanon of some scantily clad individual trying to hand out Pall Malls, let's move on to the greater demons before I lose my mind entirely. Keepers of Secrets. Now, again, with our previous theory of the recognized, exalted, and active demons, we have 6 demons for Slaanesh, as would be expected. That is the fewest number of actively able to enter real space at the same time, greater demons. But, even with the fewest number, Slaanesh has a lot of attention to give out, and these are her most important handmaidens and servants, meaning that she exalts 4 of them more than any other god has exalted at one time. That means 4 of the 6 Keepers of Secrets will be exalted at any one time, meaning that you are more likely to meet an exalted greater demon of Slaanesh than a regular greater demon of Slaanesh. Now, of course, the immediate question to this is, why? Why would we not hear about them all the time? Well, very simple. Slaanesh is not the most powerful god. Rarely, in fact, is she the most powerful anything. Her demons are, again, very hyper-specialized. They're not really designed to be all-rounders, and if you were to compare them on a one-to-one basis with many other demons of any level, they would come up wanting. She's not the most powerful, but what she can do is she can exalt more of her followers because they are obsessed with her. Unlike Khorne, Tzeentch, and even Nurgle, she doesn't have to worry about them going against her will or getting ideas of their own. They are obsessed with nothing but exactly what she wants. They're all on the same page, more or less, unlike some of the other greater demons, which have their own goals. This means that she can trust more of them to be exalted. This also means that her normal greater demons, the 2 minors, and whichever ones are in stasis or in the warp, are going to be slightly less powerful than the standard ones of other greater demons. So, your average bloodthirster is likely to beat your average minor keeper of secrets. However, a major Keeper of Secrets, an exalted Keeper of Secrets, so to speak, will be able to beat the brakes off of any other standard greater demon. That's the trade-off, because it also means that while she has more of them, her exalted greater demons are slightly, emphasis on slightly, less powerful than the other gods. which is why she has more of them, so that she can overwhelm whoever she needs to at the moment. And again, the jealousy and the popularity contest at the Party Palace is directly related to the Keeper of Secrets. Their goal, their job, is to be partying at the very heart of the party, right next to Slaanesh, being her handmaiden, helping her out with whatever it is that that creature wants at the moment, and not being sent from her sight. Now, this means that they always want to go back there. They always want to be back in the palace. They always want to be returning to Slaanesh. But they need to leave. They have to leave. There is always a limit on the amount of fun that they're allowed to have, which sucks for them. They hate it. You can understand how pissed a greater Keeper of Secrets would be, a genuine handmaiden of the prince, access to infinite pleasures and infinite attention from your god, and then being told to go and fight in a war? That's not fun. That's not enjoyable. Compared with everything else that I'm doing, that sounds like a drag. And that's really how it is. You can understand how pissed off they are when they get summoned by some mortal, or bound, God forbid, to something in real space. They're like, God damn it! I was just having a ton of fun, and you're now pulling me out to deal with your stupid human shit. I'm gonna cut you in half and try and leave. But of course, it's a popularity contest. If they do something in real space now, they might be able to stay for longer next time. So it's very much a rotating popularity contest, and yeah, there's a lot of jealousy, selfishness, and backstabbing within this court. A lot of them are perfectly willing to shove another greater Keeper of Secrets under the bus to go do a job so that they can stay in the party for longer. It's a very fun mentality, and if you play it around that the Keeper of Secrets basically never want to be there, whenever a cult summons them or whenever somebody shows up, they're always like, okay, let's get this done as fast as I possibly can. I want to go home. Your party's nice and all, but there's a nicer one going on in the palace, and I would like to chop chop, let's go. They're one of the few Slaaneshi demons that are absolutely in a hurry to get moving and get back, because they have a party to return to, and it's a good one. So, what is Slaanesh's relationship to humans, or her human followers? Well, what does Slaanesh respect or like? Insatiability, the inability to regulate your drives, low willpower, the idea that, well, might as well do this, might as well do that, there's nothing wrong with a little bit of indulgence every now and then, there's nothing wrong with a little bit of self-enjoyment every now and then. And that idea, that slippery slope mentality, if you apply that to your life, bingo, you're already on the way, buddy. What we need to get you now? Passion. Passion, something that you feel passionate about. You may be laissez-faire about morality and about the right thing to do. Who cares about that? If I feel good, I'm gonna be pure hedonism, baby. You can let it ride. However, there is one thing upon which I will offer no substitute. My art. My obsession, and it really means bleeding into obsession. Willingness to let your passion drive you to heights and extents that no other thing will. You could be in a horrible situation, or you could be in a great situation. This is often a thing that people get confused. They say that Slaanesh is a god of the rich. I really severely disagree with this. Slaanesh can get to anyone. Anyone who has weak willpower or who leads a hedonistic lifestyle. And it doesn't have to be hedonism in its entirety. Your guilty pleasure could be something so simple as enjoying a nice cool glass of water after work. Perhaps that's all you need, and next time it'll be a glass of lemonade. Well, that took a little bit longer, a little bit more pain in order to acquire. What'll it be next time? It's always got to be something that ratchets up with that pleasure and pain principle until your passion drives you into that perfection state. Now, that obsession, of course, is related to weak willpower and vulnerability to positive stimulation. This is another important thing. Some people are self-loathing, self-brutalizing, and stuck in their ways. This is often why Slaanesh doesn't want to work with Nurgle at all, because Nurgle is lethargic. Nurgle has no interest in simply being vulnerable to positive stimulation. Any entertainment or passive good feelings are completely transitory, and to Nurgle, they're actually counterproductive. I mean, if you enjoy the fleeting pleasures of life, you're kind of getting away from the whole point that this cycle is despair, and you better accept it because that pleasure is going to go away eventually. Slaanesh is the opposite. I'm gonna keep giving you happiness, you just keep accepting it there, boyo. You be vulnerable to my positive stimulation, and you and I are gonna get along just fine. Finally, personal pride and selfishness. Now, we often think of selfishness as a negative thing. For Slaanesh, it's a necessity. And of course, she's aware that every human develops personal pride, and it can develop into selfishness eventually. And this, of course, this pride, this lead-on, has a knock-on effect, which is self-obsession. Narcissism. Not in the clinical sense, not in the traditional sense where you can't think of anything but yourself, but real classic self-obsession. You're just self-absorbed. You're so good. You're having such a great time. Everything's coming up you. There's no need to worry about anything else. Morality, who cares? Morals, who cares? Friends, who cares? Right and wrong, who gives a damn? I'm having a great time. Don't harsh my buzz. Don't harm my mellow. I'm having a good time. Let me be me. Pure hedonism, one of the best. And this also comes into another thing. None of the parts that I've mentioned are outwardly effective. None of these things. Instability is internal. Willpower is internal. Passion is internal. It may bleed into an external obsession, something that's produced, but doesn't have to be. It could be something entirely internal, working on yourself, working out, running, becoming talented at artwork, at music, at singing. Any of these things can be personal passions, and they're not external. I don't have to externalize them onto another person. I don't have to do something to engage in an obsessive passion. Personal pride and selfishness are entirely internal. The whole fall to Slaanesh can occur with nobody being the wiser. Nobody has to know that you hold this demon, metaphorical in this case, or literal in this case, inside of you. And of course, that brings into question, how does Slaanesh then get her fix? If all of this worship is internal, and the only production is your happiness and your suffering, how does she benefit? Well, there is something that I like to call the cheerleader effect of Slaanesh. And that is seeing Slaanesh as a sidelines god. Your actions are serving you. Of course. Of course they're serving you. Slaanesh is going to keep telling you, of course you're serving yourself. You deserve it. You're big ups. You feel that happiness. I'm not giving it to you. You're giving it to you. And that's what you want, right? More happiness, more pleasure. That pleasure-pain principle coming in. Maximizing the good, minimizing the bad. And then she cheers you on from the sidelines. Keep going, push further. And you want to quit. You want to stop. You want to stop drinking. You want to stop smoking. You need to get your life together. You need to organize. You need to find a way to get out of the slums. If you're a poor person, you need to stop paying at the corner store for this cheap liquor and this cheap booze. If you're a wealthy person, you need to stop being on drugs all the time. Stop being inebriated all the time. It's interfering with life. It's interfering with... Keep going. Slaanesh is cheering from the sidelines, actively manipulating, actively pushing you further and further as the pleasure decreases, the pain increases, and the tipping point, the point where you say, the pain is worth it. Push through it. I'll suffer gladly if it means that I get that feeling again. And then once you reach that point, once the suffering is pushed through and you reach that peak perfection point, that balance point, cheerleader goes on. Good job. Keep going. Pride in yourself. Absolutely. Respect yourself. And that's when the blessings start happening. That's when the pride starts developing. That's when the worship of Slaanesh goes from internal to external. And that's when it becomes much more noticeable, usually on your physical person. But we'll talk about that in a bit. But really, you can look at Slaanesh as a sidelines god, and this is one of the reasons why she affects everyone equally. Everyone has their vices, everyone has their goals, and since it's all internal, God knows you don't have to spend a bunch of money, you don't have to spend a bunch of time. You can do a lot of the stuff that Slaanesh wants you to do through pure personal effort. And that effort, once it drives you to obsession and drives you to madness, that pleasure and effort principle is going to get you doing whatever she wants you to do at the drop of a hat. And it doesn't matter if you're poor. If you're poor, it's simply going to be a different form of it. If you're wealthy, it's going to be a far more extravagant form of it. But you can get away with it in both versions, so she has no problem being on the sidelines and cheering you on as you do her will unknowingly. Things that Slaanesh hates that humans do. Well, it's a pretty short list because she is very intertwined with the natural form of humanity. The first big one is invulnerability. Now, being immune to pain or being immune to mental stress or mental instability is a bit of a blocker for Slaanesh. She's always going to run into people who are simply too tough to be corrupted, too durable or resilient to need or suffer from her treatment, from her cheering. That's going to be a bit of a bitch. However, you can always corrupt people. You can always try. You can always find that narrow wedge. It's a little thing oftentimes. It's a habit. It's a habit. It's smoking. It's drinking, socially. It's driving fast cars. It's liking weaponry. It's being obsessed with history. Anything of that kind can be driven into passion. And then the process begins. You become more and more obsessed, more and more debauched with your particular brand of worship. And then, so all of a sudden, you're not so invulnerable to that pain once we ratchet up the pleasure and pain principle a few more notches. It just takes more effort on Slaanesh's side. Incorruptibility is another one. Moral indomitability is rare amongst mankind. Very, very rarely do you get sane people who are completely morally incorruptible. It is not an unfair thing to say that mankind as a species is corrupt, is not evil necessarily, depending on your interpretation of humans as a whole, not evil necessarily, but indeed easily corruptible and vulnerable to the whims of the heart, the mind, and the body. When you have someone who is purely morally incorruptible, genuinely has a code that they live by, something that they will not break under any circumstances, that's another challenge for Slaanesh. Now, what does she do in that scenario? The best option, really, is to keep poking around and putting them in situations where their morals can be questionable. If you are a Arbite and you live by the law, I am the law, and you live by the lex, and your entire life is being pure upstanding and law-giving, perhaps she'll influence someone close to you to commit a crime. Are you willing to let them off? Are you willing to change or to bend your morals? And she'll keep testing you. If she wants you, and let's be honest, she wants everyone. So she'll keep testing, she'll keep trying and prodding, she'll send you more challenges. She's a big one on challenges, until maybe those morals bend, maybe they crack, maybe the pressure gets to you. And then maybe you'll change your mind about that whole incorruptibility nonsense. It's only a matter of time. It's one of my favorite things with Slaanesh is everybody's resilience is just a matter of time. Some people crumble in a day, some in a year, some in a decade. But she'll gladly keep you alive to keep tempting you. Much like Satan. So, resilience and rejection of either pleasure or pain. If you reject pleasure, say if you're a Nurgle worshiper, she has no use for you. If she can't get to you by you feeling happy, or if you're a mindless lobotomite and you can't feel pleasure anyway, if you're a Marine, again, arguable, can Marines feel pleasure? Yes, technically. But it's a lot harder than with normal humans. So as long as if you reject, if you're resilient, if you refuse temptation, The temptation is still there. Temptation's always there. But if you refuse it, it's harder for her to get to you. You can put it out of your mind. She's not a really direct god. She's a cheerleader. She's a cheerleader. She's on the sidelines. She's pom-pomming away with her big pom-poms and her big crown, trying to get you to look over there so she can flash you, basically. But she's not going to turn your head. She's not going to force you, unless she really, really needs you to. But that's a rarity, and it requires a lot more active involvement from her demons. Principles and morals is the other one. If you do really have principles and morals that you live by that are so strict and restrictive that really she can't get a way in edgewise, it's tough. Most often you'll see this with like reclusive hermits or with very, very downtrodden people. I'm talking people who have never really experienced pain or pleasure, and they live in absolutely horrible conditions where nothing makes them happy. People who are already halfway to killing themselves, she can't really help out, because what can she do? What makes them happy? What can she even try that is going to help them accept her gospel? It's very difficult for her. Things that Slaanesh asks you for, well, it's a very simple process like we talked about before with the 4 Ps. Take things that you like and live them to the fullest. Do it to the max. Live life to the max. Maximize. Be the best. Be the fastest. Stand out for how good you are and relish in that feeling. She does the rest. Again, it's a process of logarithms. The pleasure comes initially. You push through the pain gets worse. The pleasure comes more and more infrequently. You become more and more addicted to it. And as you push yourself harder and harder with more obsession to the point of self-destruction, to the point of pushing yourself to the maximum, the peak of humankind, with whatever drugs or psychotic training regimens you need to do, peak perfection. Genuine perfection. Something not only worth relishing in, not only worth having pride in, but something that she rewards. Her blessings and rewards are for doing what you wanted to do anyway, but you were too inhibited to do. You had to go through the process. You had to break the taboos. You had to experience that suffering, be it social, emotional, or physical. Socially, what if you were doing something horribly immoral and people clutch at their pearls when they discover it, and what has this monster done? And you're thrown out of society, cast away. And yet you still have your pride intact. Some burning, sick, selfish, jealous piece of you says, you did nothing wrong. You did exactly what I asked you to do. That's the inhibition. That's the feeling that she's trying to replace. That barrier between what you want and what you can do to achieve it, she removes entirely. And simply makes it a process of, do you want it? Can you do it? Do it. It makes it such a straight dive into depravity. And it's no longer a long, painful process for you. Her gifts are often custom made to make you better than better. Better than best. Better than perfection. You've reached peak perfection. She's going to help you reach further. And that's where the real overt worship begins. How do these cults form? Well, the really simplest one is she's always active. She's always tempting. Are you bored? Does life get boring? Do you feel annoyed with your job, with your family, with your friends, with life, with your 9 to 5? Does it bore you? Oh, what to do? What to do when life is boring? What to do when things take too long? Well, I could find an easier way to do it. I could get better at it. And that's the start. That's the start point. When you say to yourself, well, I could do it better. And then you do. And it gets better and better from there, and the process restarts. Why would you join one of these cults? Well, of course, it's a lot of people who are on that goal, who are on that grind of, well, I'm going to be the best. However, the best can also mean I want to feel the best. I want to look the best. I want to drink the best. I want to party the best. Do you want to be happy? Do you want to be more than happy? Do you want to experience all of the things that regular society doesn't allow you or want you to experience? Do you really think that this morality of our society is holding you back more than it's actually helping you? Join the cult, brother. So, what are Slaanesh's gifts, then? Well, they come in many varieties, as you would expect from a god who has so many unique icons, symbols, and versions. Short horns are very common. These are usually curved, kind of like the classic devil's horns again, driving back to that Lucifer satanic analysis of Slaanesh, how she's so close to the original Son of the Morning Star. Purple or pink skin, again, very common. Of course, eyes as well, purple and pink. Androgynous and mixed human features. Now, of course, we all know that a lot of Slaaneshi demons, many Slaaneshi leaders, demon princes, etc., have a hermaphroditic form. A breast on one side, a pectoral muscle on the other. And it's usually human. It's usually perfect as well. They are either elongated or warped in a certain way that is unnatural, genuinely unnatural, not just like, oh, weirdly perfect or weirdly normal or weirdly sized. It's perfect. It's perfected for the size. It's something that is absolutely impossible out of a normal human being. And it's a physical human feature. That's another thing. You don't often see many animal things. I mean, you'll see some on occasion, but they usually won't be the central form of the body. I mean, occasionally you get people with lots of specific mutations, but in terms of actual gifts, rarely does Slaanesh seek to mar what her worshippers already bring to the table. Her worshippers have spent so much time and so much effort making themselves better, in fact, making themselves the best, that rarely does she want to mar their work. She merely wants to provide them an extra layer and extra capability. Now, that could be just adding to the overall perfection, clearing out any bumps, cleaning off anything, reapportioning the limbs or the body to fit with what that perfect human form is capable. Think of the Adonis sculptures. You know, normal humans don't look like that. Normal humans don't look like Greek sculptures, but if somebody trained hard enough and worked hard enough, they could get close. And then when they're blessed by Slaanesh, it becomes perfect. It becomes elegant, refined, exact, to a point which is in perfect excess. Something either visible or invisible that makes the person perfect. Perfect in an unnatural way. Perfect in a way that makes you disturbed. Perfect in a way that is impossible to obtain with normal human methods, which is very indicative of how Slaanesh works. She encourages you to do the best that you can, and then once she's cheerleaded you on and you are a full-blown worshipper, well, now she can give you a little bit of help. Magic. Now, Slaanesh's magic is related in a lot of ways to fields, musks, and other things. The big ones here are sleep, mental manipulation, and pseudo mind control. It's a very common thing with Slaanesh that they have genuine pseudo mind control. This could be something as simple as somebody who's completely mentally dominated another person, or physically dominated them in some cases, if you know what I mean. And in this way, they control others. They have power over them because they are the superior, they are perfected. The other is imperfect, inferior. They could consider themselves genuinely, hierarchically, better than regular mankind, which means that their magic often manifests in this way. Psykers of Slaanesh, demons of Slaanesh that use magic, are inherently putting themselves in the dominant position in whatever magical capability they're attempting. This is why it so often manifests in disarming or in weakening abilities rather than outright murder. Just killing someone is artless. Oftentimes it's pointless. Slaanesh doesn't want to just murder intelligent, powerful people. She wants to use them, manipulate them, turn them to her side. Because, of course, powerful people are powerful tools. So why ruin it? Why waste it when you could control it? Which is often a very common thing with Slaanesh. Physical manifestation of corruption. Now, there are a lot of them. We've already gone over some. Tentacles, another thing where Slaanesh is just outright stealing from both Nurgle and Tzeentch in this case. Slaanesh's tentacles tend to be of different types. Usually they are the more classic octopus rather than the squid tentacles or the corrupted maggot tentacles of Nurgle, I suppose. But the more classic ones are, of course, crab claws. Chitinous plating is another one. So, unlike Khorne, who has a lot of metal implanted into his demons and humans, Nurgle, who of course has corruption, just like physical bloat, and Tzeentch, who has like impossible armor or flames. Slaanesh is chitin, the smooth, perfect carapace over her followers in many cases that acts as both highly flexible protection and also kind of a creepy way of changing their physiology into something that requires less waste, essentially. So perfecting the body. Chitin doesn't really breathe, it doesn't have pores, it doesn't sweat. So for a human, it's often a direct upgrade sometimes in some cases. And of course, talons and other things of that nature. Pseudo crab claws are fairly common. But like I said, specifically with physical manifestations, Slaanesh is not out to make you look like her or make you look like her demons. The only thing that's really a one-to-one is the crab claws. And let's be honest, crab claws are just cool. The thing that Slaanesh does with her physical manifestations of corruption, and often with her gifts as well, is that she wants to emulate and make you better at whatever it was that drove you to worship her. Now, in many cases, that is changing things about you that were used to accomplish the task. If you were a beautiful singer, perhaps she gives you 3 mouths and 3 throats to make you 3 times as loud, capable of singing at different pitches. If you were an incredible marksman, perhaps she turns one of your eyes into a binocular scope that can adhere to your rifle and allow you to shoot at insane distances. A little bit esoteric, but perfectly reasonable. If you were addicted to smoking or to drugs, perhaps she turns your entire bloodstream into drugs and allows you to simply produce them within your body, keeping you at a constant state of high for all time. Chain smoking, just eternally. And from the inside, of course. So, it's very specific most of the time. Corruption of people and animals. Prolific lack of morals. Now, you might say that corruption, the prolific lack of morals, isn't that applying to everyone? No. Prolific lack of morals within society. Now, this is not just the Slaaneshi cultists. This is not just the people who worship Slaanesh. This is not just the people who are part of the club and joining in. This is a pervasive warp anomaly that Slaaneshi corruption causes an actual physical degradation of morals. People just don't care anymore. Often things like the plague of unbelief can theoretically be blamed on Slaaneshi corruption. It's a de-tabooing of society. It's a removal of restraint. And in this case, I've called it a degrading of self-restraint. Any ideas of prudishness, of humility, anything that holds down is seen as holding back society as a whole. Why let the old revel in their rules and their laws? Why let the leaders claim they own us? They don't own shit. I am the best. We are the best. They ain't got nothing on us. And of course, that leads to an absolute spiral effect. People who have absolute self-confidence, pride, and obsession are very difficult to dissuade from whatever horrible path of nightmarish activities they wish to partake in. Yes, Slaanesh has some really, really messed up lore. I'm not gonna lie. A lot of it is reticent or reliant on the fact that her corruption just breaks down everyone's inhibition, and it ruins a lot of stories and lore because, yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult to write that stuff without understanding, like, oh, nobody's going to be able to read this normally. So, it's difficult, but we do our best, and I think I've done my best here. Corruption of items. The biggest one here is auras, sensations that are associated with them, much like the magic I was talking about before. Again, mind control. Unnatural affectations is another one. So unnatural effects on materials. Food becomes better. Drink becomes better. Pain becomes sharper. Everything becomes heightened when this object is used. This is often in relation, say, with a weapon. Your special sword that you use for dueling. It's a normal sword for the entirety of your life. And then once you truly reach the top of your art, you've defeated everyone in the international fencing competition, you put away your sword, you party all night, and then when you come back, your sword looks a little different. Wasn't it gold before? Now it's silver. Weren't those gems fake before? Now they're real, and they're purple. Did somebody change this? Is this a gift? And then you touch it. You grab the item and you realize it's weightless. Not only is it weightless, not only is it so easy for you to wield, it seems to respond to your mind, almost moving your arm faster than you can think about it. Now, of course, any moral and righteous person would look at a weapon controlling itself and say, oh no, evil, corruption, bad. But you're a champion. You just came off the best night of your life. You're a success story, baby. There's no way in hell you're giving up a gift that juicy. And that means that you're going to start using it. And using it, you're going to start winning. You start winning, that pride comes in, and oh boy, it's only a short matter of time before you're killing your opponents in cold blood and sacrificing their blood to the sword. And how long before a couple of other fellows think that maybe you're such a good duelist that they should have you teach them. Now, of course, you don't teach them with the demon sword, you teach them with a regular one, and then you bring out the demon sword when somebody's about to die. So, you can see how cults often start that way for Slaanesh. It's very interesting. Fun stuff. So, 'tis better to sink in the cum than come in the sink, as they say. I hope that you guys enjoyed that one. Of course, our credits go out to GW themselves, John Blanche, love John Blanche's art, Ray Schiffer, whose art I found very enjoyable, Wayne England, as well, for some of our artists for this. And lots of good memes for Slaanesh. I love Slaanesh. Definitely not my favorite Chaos God, but up there. This was a little bit of a longer video, I think. And unfortunately, that is for a reason. This is going to be our last one for a very short period of time. I am working day and night. People are on the Discord. You know I've been working really, really hard on some bigger adversaries videos and also just some bigger videos in general coming out soon. As you may have noticed, there have been some modifications to our schedule, to our uploads, to some of the videos. I've been doing more editing and that kind of stuff. So there have been changes. Things are taking more time. Production is taking a little bit more time. And I am, of course, busy at a regular time. So don't worry. I'm going to be doing my best to get you videos in the upcoming couple of days. I'm not going to tell you exactly when. I'm not going to make any promises. But understand that this might be the last one of these that you get for at least a couple of days. I have a long backlog of videos that people have asked me to do. And some of them are taking me a very long time to make. So, with that said, please send this to your friends now that all the Chaos Gods are done. The series is ready. I'd love to have it send out to people. Post this stuff on Reddit, whatever you need to do. I don't want to do it because that's kind of rude. But anything that you need to do, please send us around. We are so close to getting that higher group where we can get more and more people access to the channel, and it'll be more fun for everyone. So, with that said, I wish you all a lovely good night.